All right, so we are good to begin now. Um, and we are live on Facebook as well. So that is great. Um, welcome everyone to the session about teaching online and how to get started with teaching online. So this session is basically about how you can start teaching online independently, as we have our two speakers here who have been teaching online. So first, I will introduce them a little to you. We have Nevis with us. Nevis has a vast experience of about 25 years in teaching. She has been a teacher at Classical Studies High School, Italy, of English Conversation and English Drama, English Exam Preparation, Cambridge FCE and PET, Erasmus Plus projects, and Business English to local corporations, ESP English for Technical Institute Tertiary. Neves also translates from Italian to English, specializing in business manuals, historical archives, and medical papers. Works as interpreter and mediator for business negotiations. She also teaches online using interactive learning platforms via Pegasus One Languages, participates actively in online teacher training and development courses such as Moodle for Teachers and Teaching with Technology. And what Nevis believes in is learning along the way, which is a great thought, and we'll get to know more about it. And the co-speaker that we have with us is Cheryl McCoy. Cheryl McCoy is celebrating more than 45 years of teaching, 3 decades in public school settings. She holds BS and MS degrees, as well as additional courses and training in 3 integrated learning areas: STEAM, English language arts, and psychology and the social sciences areas. Because Cheryl believes that learning belongs in the life path of students, she's gathered an extensive repertoire of special education courses, learning and training. She uses this expertise to implement individualized educational programs that span preschool to college level interactions and courses. Cheryl teaches online and face-to-face, implementing her unique fusion of teaching tools, inquiry-based skills, and interests. Today, Cheryl lives with her family on their sustainable farm in the Central Plains of the United States. And what Cheryl believes in is be a role model for the care and positive action you want to see in your world. What an amazing thought. This is an amazing set of thoughts that I have come across, and I really thank both of you to actually volunteer to share about your experiences, with us. I am sure this is going to be an enriching experience for everybody who's attending this meeting. So I would like to start with Nevis. Can you please tell us more about yourself and introduce yourself? And how did you actually get started with teaching online?
There we go. Can you hear me now? I unmuted, yes?
Yes, great.
Okay, great. So I got started teaching online some years ago. It was 2012 or 2012 when due to circumstances, I had to leave the normal school setting and work from home. When I decided to work from home, I thought I had to understand how learning or teaching from home could come about. And so I started by doing courses online. I attended some Moodle MOOCs and some MOOCs, massive open online courses that I found amazingly enough through my LinkedIn contacts. Because at the time, really social media wasn't really a professional development tool as much as it has been ever since. I think probably a lot after probably 2015, something like that. Anyway, so from the Moodle MOOCs that I did, or from the MOOCs themselves, I learned the basic elements of preparing materials for teaching online, and I understood how to use some of the platforms. The main platform that I used at the beginning was WizIQ, and WizIQ to this day is still one of the strongest platforms. Then there's Moodle, the Moodle, which is a very good platform, but if you download it on your own, you need to set it up, and it does take a little bit longer. However, it's been since, and then probably since 2012, I just got on the bandwagon, as we say in English, and the learning online or teaching online bandwagon. So as I was learning along the way, I was also teaching. That's why I probably always say that one of the tools or one of the quotes that I use a lot is learning along the way, because I think that if you're a teacher and you're aware of what's going on around you, you're constantly learning as well as not just teaching, as well as teaching. So that's probably it in a nutshell. However, I do need to thank a few people that were there in the beginning, and that was Dr. Nellie and Jason R. Levine, who were the very first people that I connected with online, and who really helped me a lot in the beginning to get an identity online, because I think you need to get an identity, and then the rest falls in, as we'll show during this webinar. Over to you, Harshita.
That's so great to know about your actually the journey that you started on with, and we'll discuss more about all of this along the way. I would request Cheryl to also please introduce yourself and your journey, and how did you started? How did you get started with teaching online?
Thank you, Harshita, for having us. This is really wonderful. Yes, I have been, well, computers and technology kind of were invented as I went along in school. So by the time, so anything new that came out, man, I was right there. I wanted to know, I had to be there. So, when I got to teaching actually online was as a part of offering professional development class for teachers in a middle school in Wichita. It was all the math teachers. The online teaching was a blended program. We'd have face-to-face meetings and then in-services, and we collected online data. We had lesson development, and those things we shared. We used Blackboard and goal setting for the classroom and the school. So it was, we thought, awesome, but obviously we look back on it now, it's very primitive, and unless you had like a video shop or studio, you couldn't see anybody, so that was, unless you were NPR or on the news or something like that. But we did all that kind of stuff, and then I joined this group called Tapped In, and it was I believe an experimental group, but that's where I first met Dr. Nellie. I don't know if she remembers that, but I then again met her later with the Moodle. But that's what happened. I got into Tapped In, and they had a little community. Still no video. But this is like 2004, right? So, so that's when I first got started.
That's great. This is This is very nice to know that, you're coming from not an era, but, an age where technology was not so prominently used in teaching and education, but how both of you adapted to technology and how both of you actually, got into teaching online. So when you actually started teaching online, were you very tech savvy? How is it like? Generally, the notion is that you need to know a lot of technology to get online, and that is why it seems to be a daunting process for the teachers. They fray away from adapting to technology. But since you have done it, how tech savvy were you when you actually started off, and how much did you learn on the way? How was your journey regarding technology?
Well, you want me to take that first? Um, so what happened was, since everything was new, and I do mean new, I remember the first time we had an Apple IIe at our school, and we thought we were really uptown, and actually for the area we were, and it had a floppy disk. And I don't even know if some of you know what a floppy disk is. It's like a 5x5 square with magnetic media inside it, where everything's it's where all the stuff is copied from the computer. And I tried to push it in, and it was like moving. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to run this. Right off the bat, I was very afraid that I was going to be known school-wide for running the computer. So then I stopped and I asked the librarian. Everything was in the library. So that's where I first got started, literally. And that was in 1980s, I don't know, 89, 90, 89, 88 or 89, maybe before that. But yeah, it was quite a long time ago. So every time something new would come up, like I took Macromedia classes and Director, how to make things, because I wanted to write stuff for my class, and nobody even thought about we could actually do stuff. The internet hadn't even been dreamed up yet. So that was one thing, that how I did it was a little bit easier, I think, than for people today. Because in some instances, because everything was new, you had a chance to look at it with fresh eyes, and there weren't competing platforms, and there weren't competing applications. So therefore, in some ways it was easier, but in other ways, everything you got, you wanted to be able to do something more, and then you figured out you couldn't do it with that. And then you're like, okay, what am I going to do here? And then something new would come out, and then you could do that. So it was that, okay, it's like going into the mountains, you get to the foothills and there's a lot of them. And you just keep going over the foothills, and then you get to the mountains and there's a lot of them too. But you just go, I got to get there. This is really cool. So basically that's how it started. But I will tell you that when I was in the first grade, this was a long time ago, we had something called Weekly Reader magazine. It was like a little newspaper, really, a 2 or 3 page newspaper. And it came from SRA or some group that did reading things. So it had the news of the day. And I remember on the front page, just blasted on the front page, was some kid sitting on a kind of a couch type thing with a great big screen against their wall. It wasn't a screen like we think of a white fabric screen. The window was the screen, and they were learning and they were doing their lessons. And I was like, yes, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So, we're almost there. So anyway, that's it. It's just something catches in you. And then main thing is, you don't have to be brilliant, and you don't have to be anything really except interested. If you're interested and you have a positive outlook and a positive feeling about growth, that I can grow, that I didn't learn everything in the 8th grade, because if you're a teacher, you can't not have a positive growth feeling, you know? Otherwise, why would you teach? If it was a fixed mindset and everything was said and done, there would be no reason for teaching. But we know that's not the truth. We know that everybody learns more and it's positive. So that is why I think instead of, you know, like struggling, just let it go. If it's bothering you or not going, feel free to ask questions. That's what I did. I'd ask people, I'd bug people if they wouldn't help me. You know, I'd make them answer my questions, and just, anyway, that's it. I think I got a little off topic there, but that was it.
That is so nice to know, because you know, that is exactly what it is. You need to be self-motivated, and as a teacher you always have to be self-motivated to learn more and more, and you actually have to adapt to whatever comes your way. That would prove to be helpful for you and for your learners as well, and not just out of the compulsiveness of the situation. It has to be from within, that you are willing to adapt. So I think Nevis would like to add more.
There we go. Yes, as you were saying, and as Cheryl was saying, number one is the curiosity and the interest to want to learn. However, going back to the original question, do we need to be tech savvy? Is it difficult? Is it a lot? No, you don't need to be very tech savvy. You need to just be able to use a few things. If you can use your email, if you can use a social media, I'm not saying every one of them, but if you can use Facebook or even Twitter, and you can create a post and write it, then that's really probably, and be able to turn on your computer and share your screen, be able to check your webcam video and your audio. I changed back to my original PC today, which had been at the maintenance, and came back. So I had to recheck a little bit of my audio and video that wasn't showing up because it went back to the default. But some of these things that seem awkward sometimes at the beginning, and for some people that don't do that every day, I can imagine that it can be funny. Oh, sorry, funny. No, funny's not the right word. That it can be hard to understand, or that it can seem like, oh, I'll never get there. But that's not true. What you need is, number one, is what is important, which is what I always say when you want to teach online, and Cheryl and I have done this in our programs, is you need to know what it is you want to teach, number one. And if you are good at teaching something, whatever that is, and that can even be, for example, learning how to sew or crochet, why not? You can do that as well. Whatever you want to teach, you have to be good at knowing what you want to teach, number one. Secondly is, as I said, if you have those few basic tools that you can write an email and send an email, you can answer emails, you can check your own hardware, very little of it, you don't have to go inside too much. And if you can write a post of some sort on Facebook, then the next thing you need to do is you need to use a learning management system. And we'll go into this a bit later on perhaps, but you need to be able to use any, and there are so many free learning management systems out there. You don't even have to go out and buy one, because you can use a free one to begin with and learn how to use it. I'll give you some more tips as we go into this later, but you don't be afraid to start. You don't need to be a computer programmer. You just need to be aware of what it is you want to do and take it one step at a time. So that's basically in answer to the, do you need to be tech savvy or not? Over to you, Harshita.
That's great. So that is exactly what it is. You do not actually have to be a coder, a programmer, or a hardcore IT expert to actually get started. Because in today's day and age, the technology that is available is so user-friendly that, you know, you just have to spend some time in learning. It might be a slight learning curve, but eventually you'll be able to get through it. So the point is, Nevis, that when you started teaching independently online, as in on your own without being associated to any other organization, that is about your independent classes that you started off. So how did you manage to get your first 10 learners to enroll for your course? Because this is one thing that everybody wants to know, how to actually get started with it. You have everything in place, you've understood technology, you've created your courses, you have all the IT that you require, you have everything in place, but how do you get somebody to enroll for your course? Do you need to do marketing, or is it word of mouth, or how is it? How did you start it off?
Well, good question. First of all, I think what's really important is marketing is always going to be important. But before you get to the point of spending money on, or even time on marketing your courses, I think what you need to do is you need to go back to the people that you have already been working with. Most people that turn to teaching online have already got a small network somewhere. Now, my first network were my private students that were coming either here or I was going to them, or some smaller companies where at the very beginning where I was going there and doing courses on the spot. So what I did was I hounded my immediate contacts, the ones I already had, that network that was already existent in my case. And what I did was I contacted all of them and said, can you please help me in my next phase of learning? And that was going to be teaching online. Can you please now be my students online? I will give you 1 or 2 or 3 free lessons, each and every one of you, until I get to a point where I'm confident enough on how to use not just the technology, but how to teach online, because teaching online is not face-to-face. It's not just a webinar where you do a lecture and that's it. Teaching online is either a one-to-one tutoring situation where you have it face-to-face. You could be using material like textbook, etc. And when you're doing it online, that material has to be digital. You have to be able, it's not just a open the camera and talk for half an hour or an hour and that's it. No, it's a lot of things put together. So my first 10 clients were probably my network, which was quite full of about, I think I contacted 40 or 50 people, and then have ended up having this small group of maybe 8 or 9 at the very beginning that actually agreed to coming online and learning with me and seeing if it could suit them. What happened was, from those 8 or 9 people, that some of them said to me, no, online is not for me. I don't like it. I want you to be here in my office. I don't want to connect online. And of course, that reverted back to face-to-face. But those other people that found it exciting, interesting, immediately went forward and booked a package. And then when they booked that package of 10 or so lessons that for their level of English or whatever it was that I was doing with them, whether it was business English, etc., then it just evolved. Slowly people started talking about it. Then once you get in the beginning, you'll probably find that because you're on that tiny learning curve, as you were saying, Harshita, which is true with everything, while you're in that phase there, you probably get more people than you even counted on, because at the beginning, word of mouth, and if you say I'm going to give 3 or 4 lessons or 1 or 2 lessons, whatever, free, people sort of join in. And then if they like it, and which is 70% of the time, that's what happens, you'll get people booking 4 or 5 or 6 lessons or 10 lessons, whatever, and then it just goes from there. And then you'll find that those those initial packages are over so fast that the students come back for more. So the first couple of years, it was just a lot of like trial and error, and getting people coming and going, until I found my happy medium. And I think even Cheryl, we worked on some projects together where I had face-to-face, online, and online with Cheryl. So we had a complete mix of lessons, basically to keep getting people involved in online, because that's the other thing. A lot of people are not really willing to go online because a lot of them may think, but I don't want to be seen, my video, and if you record it, are you going to put it on YouTube? Of course you don't do these things. If you have a paying customer, that you can record the video and then provide it on a drive or on a like Vimeo, for example, with a password, and they can access it because they may want to re-access it. I've had companies where we did the recordings throughout the whole year, and then they've got them now on their hard drive, and their engineers can access those lessons at any time, where we talk about each lesson has a specific topic, like email writing, for example, or presenting, how to prepare a presentation, etc. So all these things come later. The first 2 years are going to be harder than expected, but you'll probably find a lot of people wanting, out of curiosity, coming towards you to find out what it is you're going to do. So you have to know what it is you want to do, which is really important. You can't just open a channel and start saying, I'm going to talk about the price of fish in China tomorrow, because it's not going to happen.
And that's
So
that's what I was about to ask you next, was that how important is it to be patient when you get started? Because patience is the best virtue, but when you're getting started, you've put in a lot of hard work, a lot of effort in setting up everything and creating courses, recording videos, or, even trying to get your learners to you. How important is it to be patient in the beginning or all throughout?
patience is a virtue that I think, goes without question, that is part and parcel of everything that we do in life. So we always need to be patient. We need to be patient when we have new customers, new clients that are not used to using the platform that we've chosen to use. We need to work with them. We need to perhaps use a couple of lessons at the beginning to make sure that they feel comfortable. We need to show them the ropes. How do we want them to answer our posts for example, in Edmodo or Schoology or Google Classroom, whatever it is we use? Patience is really number one, and you're going to have to keep your patience with you always. Cheryl and I have been teaching now online, even with various Italian teachers and teaching groups, and teachers are harder to teach than normal people, because they always expect miracles, and Cheryl can vouch for that. And it's very hard, and it's not just about patience. I think we'll get to this later in the slides. It's also about knowing who you have on the other side, what it is they want. So it's not just patience, but it's understanding your customer, your client, much better than they perhaps know themselves. So I'm going to let Cheryl answer the last two questions as well. Over to you, Cheryl, or Harshita.
Thank you. So, yeah, I had, again, when I first got started teaching online, it was a little bit different. It was more associated with school districts, because at that time, this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s, our country really did put a great, huge emphasis. President Bush, the first President Bush, and President Clinton both made sure there was lots of grants and things, so that would be for professional development to make sure teachers felt comfortable. And so then I would already have a class. So I would have a group that would sign up for a particular workshop or a particular thing through a professional development organization. And then they were mostly blended because, again, there wasn't a lot of video. But as time went on, then, of course, more and more people were, you still had to network, you still had to have word of mouth marketing, you still had to at least tell people that you're working on this, and get that out there, because sometimes teachers don't even know what's being offered to them. But as time went on, then I got involved in Tapped In, and then with the Moodle MOOCs and the various places like that, then I got more practice and was able to help people learn more about technology. But Nevis is correct about patience. One thing I had to learn, I am very self deprecating. In other words, I am my own worst enemy. I never do well enough. So I had to learn to stop that, to to not let that happen, because you're never going to be, nothing's ever going to be perfect, period. And it's even more exacerbated when you don't get to see or talk to the other people. And that brings up a point. We were working with a group of really wonderful teachers that work with Nevis, and I thought everything was going well. And then after I did an assignment, we were working on grading something, and I didn't think they were getting like a grade. I was just like going through, going, oh, this is what you want to do. Da, da, da. It was grammar, right? So of course everybody hates grammar, I think. But anyway, it was writing. And so after I did it, I didn't get any feedback. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's when I clued in at the first point myself that I wasn't getting any feedback. And then when Neva said, well, so-and-so said such, I'm like, oh my gosh. So they felt so intimidated that they couldn't tell me. It was really, really, I was really very, I don't know what's the word to say, but it was a shock for me, because I was trying to tell them how great they were doing. I gave them compliments when we talked in person and stuff like that, but they weren't hearing that. They were just seeing what I had marked out on things, how they needed to write something different, And so those are the things that you have to be patient with yourself, and you have to be patient with the teachers, and you have to hopefully see, like I had a partner, I had Nevis, somebody else to tell me what was going on. And if I saw something, I could tell her. That is a big help, because sometimes you don't get another chance, when you're teaching online and you're by yourself. So that's why if you can get those people to buy in as early as possible, to buy into what you're doing and to understand see, I like cumulative grading. In other words, today's grade is added to tomorrow's grade, is added to, and then you can improve. So your grade can improve. I hate that. Like, we're going to average all 10 of these grades up and we're going to get so-and-so score. Well, does that show improvement? No, it doesn't show improvement. It just shows the average of what you did. It doesn't actually show we could get technical about mean, median, mode and all those other kinds of averaging things that you can do, but we don't do that. I say grade people as they go on their true ability to improve, not on where they started or any area where they may have had where they fell down. That is a pitfall that you really want to look at. And I don't know about you all, but I kind of have this, because I'm really hard on myself, I have this kind of sense like I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. But when they didn't respond, then I knew something, so if people don't respond to you, you think they should, you have to go ahead and entice them, interact with them, ask them what were they like to work on, or how can we do this? I see you didn't have an answer for this. Could we do this project in a different way? Could we do the writing differently? Whatever, that stick any subject in there, but that's something that you need to be sure and do. So patience is critical. And so your ideas are key when learning in a positive feedback loop that promotes a positive mindset towards learning. So students will learn a great deal if they've asked to apply patience. So that's the thing. You want to set up that positive feedback loop, right? You get that positive feedback loop started with those people right off the bat. So some simpler, I would do this, we looked at this going, okay, we're doing this differently next time, or blah, blah. So that's just always what you do. You're always looking, you're always revising. You just do the same thing. And it is difficult in a way, but most of the time it's just stuff we would normally do as teachers. So
that's true. Absolutely. So, okay, so before you start off with your presentation, I have one last question. That is, why do you think schools have failed to adapt to technology? It should not be that it is a compulsive situation where teachers are forced to get into teaching online or using technology for that matter. Why do you think schools have failed to adapt to technology in a normal classroom scenario? Why can't we afford to have flipped classroom or blended classroom learning happening in a normal scenario, in a normal school life?
Do you want me to answer that first?
Yes, sure.
Okay, I'll take over. So basically, we have a big problem in schools across the world. I'm not just talking about USA or Australia or Italy for that matter. The problem is that teachers are still stuck in, this is my opinion, are still stuck in the last century. They're still teaching the old way. They need to move forward, and it's really hard to get a teacher who says, well, I teach from the first year to the final year and my students pass, they go on to university, so why do I need to change? It's really hard. Blended learning or flipped learning are an absolute imperative technology that we should be using. We should be, because homework shouldn't be dead and boring. Homework should be turned into something that motivates and engages the learner and brings the learners back into the classroom with some curiosity to want to know the next step. But we're not doing that. We're either giving them all the information and we're giving it to them as in pages of it, and then we expect them to just answer questions. So what are they doing? They're looking at the questions, picking up the keywords, going into the text, getting the answers and going and answering, and then they get a 10 and they think, or 8 out of 10 or something, and they think, that's it, I've done my homework, and I go on to the next thing. At the end of the year, if you ask them to recall anything that they've learned, without them looking at their notes, it's going to be hard for anything to be recalled that was done at the beginning of the first term or something, unless it's become something that they have adapted into their learning mechanisms. You said, what was the question again? You said, why do you think schools have been failing to adapt in technology? Is that correct?
Yes.
In a regular. So I think, and the other thing is that we need to understand is teachers have too much to do on their plate. So if we ask teachers to do anything more, because teachers today are not just teaching, they don't just teach, they have become they do meetings, they have to do a lot of clerical work, which in the past was done by a clerical staff, and now teachers are writing reports, are creating the curriculum every single year. They're writing individual reports for students that have support staff or that have learning difficulties. All of a sudden, in a classroom of 19 students, we could have something like 12 students with learning problems, and each one of those students has to have an individual program created for them without a support teacher, because maybe the support teacher is only for a learning disability type student. So nowadays, it's really, really hard. You can't have a normal classroom, and teachers are doing a lot more than they should be doing. Number one. Secondly, the education ministries are also very behind, because most of the education ministries take a long time to adapt to something new. Recently, the COVID situation here in Italy showed a marked change where in 3 months in most of Italian schools from the south all the way to the north, and I'm just talking about Italy with my own knowledge, our education ministry went from knowing almost nothing about online teaching or remote learning to all of a sudden creating a whole procedure, and also a protocol for setting up classes, etc. Schools turned, within 1 week or 2 weeks, most schools turned into remote learning without very many hassles, because most teachers were willing to continue teaching in any case. Students were willing to at least connect with someone because they were locked inside their home. So we had a lot of movement, but we did so much in 3 months that I now fear that if we go back to normal teaching, all of this work that was done is just going to fall in a hole and be forgotten, because already the education ministries. The other thing is schools may not have a budget to include strong internet connection, or have the budget to afford the digital equipment that's needed in a school. For example, a whiteboard, an interactive whiteboard in a classroom, a computer in a classroom that's used by the teacher, for example, and where you can demonstrate, and speakers, sometimes speakers are missing, so you can see a YouTube video but you can't hear it. These things are lacking. There's also lack of not just the hardware and the software, but also lack of experienced staff that are able to help the schools actually run this equipment. So that's really, and families may not have access to internet at home. So when you force a school to turn their students into digital students and flipped learning, maybe that student goes home and has no internet connection, has no digital equipment, which is what's happening here in most of the schools, because we have a lot of families, especially now in this situation, that cannot access internet. Then you have the problem that they lack the training. Teachers lack the training of using any digital equipment, right? Remember, teachers that have been teaching for 20 or more years may not even be aware of how to use even some apps for their subjects that could make their life a lot easier and make their students more engaged, or get their students more engaged, or so these are just some of the things that I was thinking about before when you asked that question. So over to you, Harshita, and then Cheryl may have some to add.
Yeah, I would ask Cheryl to add to that, because what you've mentioned is absolutely correct. The teachers are overburdened with a lot of other activities, which probably they, that does not count as a teaching activity. So you probably need to have supportive staff for managing the various IT equipments that you need to use. So there are a host of issues that the management needs to look at, to implement all of this. The teacher cannot be held solely responsible for adapting to technology. It has to be a a combined effort from the ministries and the education ministry and the school management. Everybody has to work in unison. So I totally agree with that. So yeah, Cheryl, would you like to add to that?
Yeah. Okay. So I totally agree with everything Nevis has said and everything that Harshita said. And to add to that, I got to tell you that as a little girl growing up in the United States, I love public education. I used to walk away, they called it running away, but I used to walk up to the college, to the Oklahoma State University when my dad would go there in the summers for summer school. And one time they found me in the engineering department, and then another with the dean of the education department. Okay, so then, yeah. So then another time I went to go visit this lady's house, and it turned out she was a friend of my mom's that had gone to school, so, and then when we went to a little bitty windswept town in Texas, I just had to go to school. And so my dad, I knew where my dad was, and I would get into the school, and then all of a sudden all the girls in the home ec class, they called it FACS, now they call it Family and Consumer Science. So they would all abscond with me and take me to their class, and they just thought that my dad thought it was okay that I was there. So my mother's calling the sheriff, right? So my point is, the school is the central hub of every community. If you look at any community that goes away in these times, it has been communities who've lost their schools. And the public schools are just as a whole under attack. And so therefore, they are not receiving the funding. They're not receiving the attention. People don't come into the school. I taught 1 year in an area school, and I never got one board member that came into my classroom. I was shocked. Now, when I taught in Wichita, board members came in all the time, assistant superintendent, they were always there. They knew what was happening. And, it's not always that way in a town or a city, but when it is, that's when everyone's in the Dow. Everyone knows what's happening, and we're all working and striving towards a common good. And that is what our education system is all about. Now, there's all kinds of problems and hiccups, but I will tell you, people, I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know what's going to happen in the other countries, but this was an opportunity. This COVID situation was an opportunity. Even if they do decide that they need to have kids come back to school, I don't know exactly why people think some of the senators who are like average of 80 years old and stuff like that, why they think that parents who were fired need to lose their unemployment. I don't know what the focus is on that, but of course it's probably the same focus as making our public schools not to be as good. Lack of reality checks. They do not know what's actually happening. And so I don't mean to necessarily be political, because I'm not political, but I do know that those are things that are much, much different than when I was a little girl. When I was a little girl, everybody was so interested in schools. But of course, that's because there were a whole ton of us. And I know that people talk about us in not very good ways, the younger people. And that's okay. I understand where they're coming from. But it's so many things, they have it. Of course, we think they have it better. But school is special. Just since, think about it, how long has it been? Not very long that school was public and free to people in our communities, and that should include technology. And that's where it's at, and so that's my thought on it. All those things that you said were correct. I know there's kids that I taught. Okay, I substituted in the fall at a school, and everything was fine. Then I substituted in another classroom in the spring, and then everything was going great. I was pulling it all together. The kids were doing good. I was starting to get a good handle on them because I felt bad for them. They lost their teacher. So then there's COVID-19, and school just shut down. I mean, we had like a day warning, you know, and then they had all these plans and all this stuff, and we had specific processes we had to go through. We had to use certain pieces of applications, things like that. That was difficult, and it was made a lot easier with parents or grandparents or whoever was taking care of these kids to work with us. And I say that's the people that you can work with when you're teaching and working with students online in your blended classrooms. Invite the parents, invite the grandmothers, invite I always liked it when I taught a class this spring when the mom was there. I'd say, come on, just sit down with us, go ahead. And also they need to have a chance to like be at a table, things like that. I know I'm getting a little off track on this one, but basically we do have an opportunity to turn public education into something that's really worthy and more relatable to the reality of our lifestyle now. We're not in a factory school anymore. Factory schools are over. And if they're not over, they're being strangled to death. And I don't blame them for that part of it. But the other part of it, every poor kid needs an education. Every rich kid needs to be in that public school too. Okay? They all need to be in that public school. I don't care rich or poor. I don't care what color. I don't care. They all need to be in a public school. So that's what I think. Give them money, give them training, give them credit, give them staff members, and you'll probably see some really cool stuff happen. And that's my call on it.
I agree with you. Just want to say that quickly. I agree with you on everything you've said, Cheryl, so far. Thanks. Over to you, Harshita.
Thank you, Harshita.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Nevis, for your thoughts on that, because that really counts as to whatever you have said. I think every teacher would resonate with that from across the globe, because what I know out of my interaction with teachers is the situation is the same across the globe. It is no different. There might be certain differences in the way the things are, but if we talk of at the ground level, situation is absolutely the same. All teachers feel the same. They are overloaded with work, and there has to be professional development avenues for teachers which are sponsored by schools, so that when teachers grow, the schools will be able to see the results in the learners. The learners are going to learn in a more adherent manner, in a more diversified manner. So professional development of teachers is absolutely important. I totally agree with everything that you have mentioned. And now, Nevis, I hand over the screen sharing to you so that you can start with your presentation. And thank you for answering all of the questions. And all the participants here, please, if you have any questions, please write to us in the chat. I'm sure Cheryl and Nevis would be happy to answer. So over to you, Nevis.
Well, here we go. Okay, as I started to share, I got a little video and I couldn't work out how to unmute. I've just done that. So let's have a look at, we've prepared just a few slides, and these slides will be available for all of you here. I'll put the link in the event on Facebook. So, and Harshita will be able to share it as well wherever she's advertised this event as well. So, and we will also prepare the paper that goes with it and as a PDF and allow you to download both. So don't panic, you'll be getting a copy if you like of the slides. So today in these very few slides, we'll just go over, Cheryl and I will go over how to get started with teaching online, because actually teaching online then is a longer process, but how to get started is really important, how to build that foundation and then go from there. So before, let's just, here we go, so I can move the slides next. There we go. So before you can even say to yourself that you want to teach online, you need to ask yourself these questions. What is it you want to teach? Why do you want to teach? Do you have any experience or training? Especially on when this question is aimed more at experience or training in using online equipment or online LMS, and are you willing to invest financially? These are the questions that you need to begin to think about at the very beginning. You don't need to spend any money at the beginning, but you need to know that as you go forward, you will need to get to do some investment. One will probably be buy into an LMS system so that you can save all your courses professionally and put them in some sort of format that can be accessed by your participants. Secondly, you may want to look at a video making program. So, and there are all sorts of video making programs. Cheryl and I use very effectively, we both use Screencast-O-Matic, and we've purchased into that. So and they're not very expensive, but you need to know that at the beginning you may need to think about these things. And because if you say, I only want to do everything free, you can, but it may make it less professional in the long run. So that's basically it in a nutshell from me. Cheryl, do you want to add to this slide?
No, I agree about you've got to be willing to invest. When I first started trying to do this by myself, on my own, not connected to any school, I did everything I could free, like Screencast-O-Matic and all those. So pick things, and that's another good way to find out how you like your apps and things like that. But now I'm to the point where I need to put up my own investment. I've already invested some money in the apps and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You probably have experience. You probably know what you're doing. You'll read and look at other people's experiences and what they share.
Okay, next slide. So these are the must-haves that you need to have just getting started. Okay, so the LMS is a learning management system. You need to find a suitable one that you're comfortable using. And there are so many out there, as Cheryl was saying. Perhaps you can concentrate on the free ones first in order to get the hang of how to use them. But remember, the more you use a free one and the more you use one that you can't manage very well, may mean that some of the material that you put onto there, you may lose if they ever change. Cheryl and I have had that happen to us over the years, where we've used certain programs or systems that were free, and then they changed over to paid versions, and we lost all of our material or whatever. So remember that whatever you aim to do at the beginning, the learning management system is important, and it can be a free one, but you have to be very careful that everything you put on there, you also keep a backup of somewhere else. The website, you can use a website. Now I know some teachers that are using strictly their own website, and they use maybe Skype lessons and shared Google Docs. So there are ways around it. You just need to find what it is that is helpful to you. And you do need an online identity, and to get an online identity, you need to promote yourself, and YouTube channel or Vimeo private channels or any other type of video channel is important. Cheryl, you can add.
Yes, I agree about the free to pay. Well, we both had that. We've both been burned by that. I've been looking at a website to make up a website, because I had one with Google on the classroom, and then I realized, you know, in the larger grouping, I realized, oh my gosh, when I leave the school, that's my website's gone, you know. And so I've been looking at reviews and things just recently, where like Wix and Weebly. I know one of the teachers, or actually a couple of teachers at our school, really, really great middle school, that was very, very, very into technology. One of the social studies teachers had his entire class assignments and things like that set up already on Weebly, and it looked real nice. So I thought, well, that'd be cool. And the learning management system, you know, some of them are really, really expensive, but they do things that you may want them to do. And others are not so expensive, but then, of course, it depends on what you need and what you want. So you need to decide on those kinds. But you need a YouTube channel. But I'd like to make a recommendation. I know that Nevis doesn't do that yet, as far as I know. Don't advertise. Don't hook yourself up to their advertising yet. When you first get started, you need to have control over your destiny, you know. And once you involve YouTube, and then they start liking or disliking or whatever what you're writing or doing, then you have a whole other thing. You don't want to do that until you have a following. And you know, you can get a following without the advertisements. You can use, if you need to, if you think you need to have backup or some funding, you can use Patreon or some of those other things. It's not advertisement, but there are people who are actually supporting you. It's kind of cool because they actually are supporting you because they think you're cool and they think the work that you're doing is cool, you know. So that's pretty much it on that one. I think there's a whole lot of things that you're probably thinking.
I was just going to say, you're right. I don't advertise. The only thing that I do use is something like LinkedIn, where I might write a post every now and again, and where I might put in the courses that we're doing or something like that, talk about something. That's as far as I go, because I find that once you start to build up that community of learners, and people get to know you, you do get contacted. And I think it just depends how large you want to go, because Cheryl and I work independently of any other institutions online. So it means that, plus we both work at schools. I work at a high school, and so does Cheryl. So we have very limited time after school to devote to online teaching. But when we do that, we tend to structure our courses so that we have like maybe 3 months of a couple of courses, and then another course the next 3 months. So we don't overload ourselves, because we are human beings and we can't work 24 hours a day, even if someone would like to imagine that, but we can't. Okay, I'm going to change the slide, and I'm going to let you introduce it, Cheryl.
Okay, so this is probably the most important part of what you need to be doing, because those other things, you're already able to do most of them, and you're really already an expert. So when you start thinking about your network, that's your PLN, your past students, your family and friends. So that's your professional learning network, or some people call it your personal learning network. Anyway, it's the group of people that you hang out with online, that you listen to, that you read their work. They have blog posts or they make Facebook posts. You read that. If they're reading something, you like to read it. And that's why I included my Goodreads in there, because I've been trying to include picture books and adult, or young adult books that I think might be helpful to teachers. So I say, create and feed your network, promote your courses. That's true. and sometime down the road, you're going to come across somebody who follows you, wants to follow you, and you think they think you think they're okay, but then anytime they have something, you mention it, and on your network, on your social media, and then you never see them mention anything about you. Okay, that is that's an issue you have to learn to deal with. So however you choose to do it, over time I have followed a few different rules, and my rules do change in my head, but basically I don't have to have 50-50. Yeah, you do it, I do it. You do it, I do it. If I even know that they're, talking to me or whatever, a like or something like that, or a share, then I'm cool with whatever they do. They don't have to just follow me all the time. But if I never see them on my box as looking at me, or if I never see them on my networks, then I have a tendency to not necessarily get rid of them or take them off, but they will become they won't be in a group. If I send information out to a certain group, they probably won't do that. And I'll tell you one thing, Nevis and I both have had this problem. People like to take what we people will take your stuff, so you got to be worried about that too. And that's why you want to make yourself a little book, put a little copyright on it, put it out there, publish it. So then you won't see somebody sharing your stuff 3 months down the road as theirs. And that's what, I don't know if that's a real friend of me type thing, but anyway, that's how it happens. I've had that even happen as early as 1998, so it's not a new technique. People were doing it not online too. But
unfortunately, that's true. That's
yeah.
true that people do copy. Actually, you brought to mind when you were saying before about following and not following. A few years ago, there was someone very famous said that he would follow you only if you wrote at least 20 Twitter feeds, 20 Twitter posts a day. That the minute you fell under 20 posts a day, he would unfollow you. And that sort of made sense in a way, because if you don't follow them and retweet their work. So I think that's important. The PLN must be someone that can retweet you or, for example, like your posts and reshare them in their network. That's important, and that's one way of promoting your courses. But again, this all comes back to, before you can get to promoting your courses, it all comes back to starting out on the right foot. And starting out on the right foot means creating this PLN if you don't have one. So create it from the start. And that can come from your past students, or even family and friends, or other colleagues online that you can say, please help me to promote myself. That can be done. Remember though, don't hound them too much, because it can work in the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, yes. I never say anything to anybody who doesn't support me but wants me to support them. But I just keep that in mind. It's like a little checklist in my head, because I'm like, yeah, can I depend or even hope that this person is even trying to make a collaboration? The PLN, it's a collaboration between you and the people that are your peers. Everybody in your PLN is most likely a peer, or if they're not a peer, they're somebody who's comfortable with your peer group. So yeah, I don't ever say anything to anybody.
Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So this is the most important part, and I'm going to let Cheryl talk about it first, and then I'll add some things in.
Okay.
If you want, Cheryl.
Yes, that's great. So free and tuition fees, we've had people talk to us personally. We set up a class and we had what we felt comfortable with as a fee, and then everybody started telling us, well, you need to charge this much and you need to do this. And they were people in our PLN, and I think they were honestly trying to help us. And in the end, well, we kind of sort of decided to do that. And then when we did, they all went to our fee structure. So we're like, people, you got to stick with what you think is best. Don't be swayed by other people unless they can truly give you research based or some kind of idea that's going to go over your intuition, your experience. So we like to offer a free lesson. That's what Nevis has already talked about. She's mentioned to you that when she first got started, even she offered a free lesson, and then if they bought a package, they got a better price. That's called the fee structure. So if you have a set of 6 classes that you're going to teach in a certain topic, the fee structure would be based like if they want to pay for it one at a time, or if they wanted to pay for it all together. And then this is something you need to discuss and evaluate all the time. Nevis and I talk about this off and on. Needs analysis and feedback. This is what I was speaking to you about, finding out what those students are thinking. And you can do that with little surveys, a little quick survey, like a day trip type thing. You know, you can use Google Forms, it's great, because then you will have data backup that you can even have in a like an Excel spreadsheet. You can have it in a spreadsheet on Google even. And then if you make your questions just so, each one of those little short surveys can be compiled into a larger one. And then you really have some interesting information that can actually guide your teaching, guide your fee situation, et cetera, et cetera. And assess and reflect. Right. Always look back, always take a look, everything. Propose, okay, conquer. So I'm going to let you carry on from there, Nevis.
Okay.
I think talking about, but I'm going to let you pick it up there.
What I mean by propose and conquer is that once you have all this foundation built, then you can propose courses to people that haven't contacted you, that you don't know. You can go and send go to websites and go to their contacts page and propose your work. Send them a taste of what it looks like, a little video that you've made on that maybe you've made with a colleague. Sometimes Cheryl and I will make a little video and send that off, and propose what you can do for them. Not just, I offer English lessons, are you interested? No, this is what I can do for your company. We can offer this, this, and this, or we, or I, whatever it is. So propose yourself, put it out there once you have that foundation built. And what I mean by conquer is that once you start, remember, don't overdo it. Don't take on more than you, don't bite off more than you can chew. So don't take on more work than you can handle, and do it properly always. So if you offer a free lesson with a package, so for example, every 10 lessons you offer 1 free lesson. So if they buy 20 lessons, that means they get 2 free lessons, plus they have the introductory lesson. So that's like having 3 free lessons. And that introductory lesson is where you would go over, share the screen and show them how they get acquainted with the LMS that you're going to be using, show them how to access the recordings if you're doing them on your Drive, or if you're sharing them with a password via Vimeo, or if they're unlisted on YouTube, whatever. All these things you'll be doing with your in the taster lesson, the free lesson, introductory lesson, sorry. And that introductory lesson doesn't have to be 1 hour. Sometimes it can be 15, 20 minutes, but sometimes it can even be 1.5 hours. If you're explaining to a group of people, remember, if you're going to be doing groups, you may want to do this with a group of people, so it may take even longer. But don't panic, because remember, if you're getting a contract of 30, 40 hours and you're giving them 3 or 4 or 5 lessons free, then that's not a problem that you're giving them the free lessons, or that the introductory lesson is going to take 1.5 hours. This is where you show your professionalism by not saying, well, I promised you 30 minutes, it's now 35, so I'm going to hang up. No, don't do that. That's very unprofessional. The other thing that I wanted to say was in setting up a fee structure. 25 years ago, when I started teaching tutoring at home or tutoring after school, I was charging what seemed to me at the time to be a fairly reasonable amount, but I hadn't checked with anyone. So within a few months, I found like I was inundated with students for tutoring, until one day I woke up and actually asked someone what they were paying someone else. And I found out I was charging less than half. So I think it's really important that you charge the right amount. So have a look around, see what other people are charging. If they know you and they know your number, then get someone else to call on your behalf and ask what they're charging. So if the going rate is around, I don't know, $35 US an hour, then you can start charging at $30 an hour in order to break into the market. And then once you're in, then slowly bring yourself back up to the average. Okay, so that's always important. Don't undercut yourself, because you may lose in the long run, in not just money wise, but even professionalism. Okay, let's move over to the next and last slide. This is a little bit, I'll just go over it quickly and then hand it over to Cheryl. What we mean by continue learning and training, that all the way through you must continue learning yourself in order to improve the way you teach and what you teach online. It's really important. We were saying before that you don't need to be tech savvy, and that's true, but you don't even need to use 25 digital apps. 1 or 2 digital apps other than the LMS is more than enough. If you're doing a course that's like 10, 20 or 30 hours, because why is this the case? People are not going to have 10 hours a day to devote to your courses. They may have only a couple of hours a day. So if you want to add an additional app to your course, to the LMS, for example, Cheryl and I use Flipgrid a lot in our conversational classes because it helps our participants in listening to themselves, listening to their pronunciation in English, which is really important in our field, but that may not be important in your field. So you may look at other apps that are relevant to the material that you'll be teaching. So it's really important that you keep training, keep aware of what's happening, use few but good apps, and concentrate on getting your teaching across rather than showing off all the digital equipment and digital tools that you may want to use. Cheryl, you can take it over.
Yes, I agree, and especially about the apps. I remember we were listening to another young man who's teaches online. He's really exceptional, and he really tried to relate all the classes to a child's identity, their home, whatever it was. And I was really impressed with, he would use Flipgrid or some other little video app and have the kids interview their grandparents, or possibly go and talk to somebody on the street, or whatever like that. So that was quite a while back, and things have changed a little bit because, in the EU, you have new rules about engaging young people. But that's probably another thing that you'll learn as you go along, and just try to be as careful as you can. If you don't want somebody to do it to your kids, don't do it to anybody else's. If you work with kids, and if you work with adults, be respectful of them too, their privacy. But MOOCs are good, and they're the ones we've talked about in the past. Digital apps, your professional learning, the reflection. What we're doing right now is reflection. Nevis and I are reflecting on what we've done, what we like the best, what we thought was, focusing on things that maybe didn't go as well as it could have, and explaining why that happened. And then that's what we do as we create new new courses or as we update our courses that we've had.
That's so true. That's really important. I really wanted to just agree with you 100% on that, and just reiterate that Cheryl and I always, even if I've just done a course on my own and Cheryl has done one on her own, hypothetically, then because we're constantly communicating, constantly working on other projects, we'll help each other to reflect on what we've just done. And sometimes that constant feedback that we have with one another and reflecting with one another helps us to understand how to make the next course even better. So I would suggest you all find a partner to work, or to a colleague that can help you in one way or another to perhaps just discuss once a month. This is what I've done. What do you think? Let them have a look at the work you've done, and maybe they can pick up something that you've missed out on. And these arrows, this cycle these arrows are to prove that this is a cycle. It's a continuing cycle. It's part of the lifelong process of learning, that it doesn't matter how old you are, you will always learn. So even if you say, oh, well, I'm not so tech savvy, I can't do anything, don't be afraid of technology. Don't be afraid of trying something new, because we are adaptable human beings, and our our neurons are made to keep learning.
That's right.
So, yeah. So
That's right.
That's basically it. We just want to thank Harshita for the opportunity of this live webinar. And I think that's it from me, and perhaps Cheryl. So over to you, Harshita.
Thank you, Nevis, and thank you, Cheryl, for this wonderful session. And you've given us really good pointers all throughout your presentation. And I've noted down some of them, and I think when you talked about having an LMS and shifting from a free to a paid LMS or a paid software while you start teaching, of course, when you begin with, you should, try to keep the cost as minimum as possible. That is, you use the free software. But also keep in mind that as you are going to go on with it, as you're going to go ahead with the same software, or are you going to shift on to some other software? Because sometimes what happens is you start off with one software believing that it is for free and it suffices your purpose and your needs at the moment. But tomorrow, when the learner's strength increases, you probably want to shift on to some other. So, in that case, although you will be learning something new, that is fine. But whatever you have learned with that one specific software, and now you've moved on to another software, then that learning has been nullified. So that effort and time that you had spent on one software and then you moved on to another software, that really, that is grilling and draining at times, that you put in so much of effort in doing all of that. So yes, and you correctly mentioned that you should stick to only a few software that you really believe would be helpful to you in the kind of activities and resources that you want to share with your learners. Not every software is made for everyone. You have to decide very carefully what kind of software is made for your purpose. Next, when you talked about having a website, and yes, I also advocate that you should have a website. You should have your own website. Probably start off with a free version on WordPress. Have a free WordPress website, have a free domain name on WordPress.com. Start off with that, and then just use free platforms that are available, maybe Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides for your presentations. Use all of them, amalgamate all of these resources that are available, all these platforms, and put them all on your website at one place. When you do that, you are providing your learners, you are basically providing your learners with one place where they can come and reach you and see the kind of, the content that you provide. Probably you do not want to make the private content available to them, the private content as in the content of your courses that are paid courses. You can keep that in a password protected page. You have an option to have a password protected page in WordPress as well. Now, when somebody joins your course, this is when you are trying to get started on a free website. Later on, when you want to scale up, you can always move on to a paid version of WordPress and then move on to it. So all these things, yes, having an LMS is very important. It's crucial because you want to analyze the learners' performance. You want to analyze and take the feedback on your own. How do you do that is when you analyze the learner's performance. How well are the learners grasping what you are teaching? How well are they able to perform the activities that you offer? And how user-friendly are you making the entire course for them? All these aspects really matter because, when it can be a learning curve for you, it can be a learning curve for your learners as well to adapt to technology. So you have to make sure that everything is user-friendly. How that happens is when you yourself are well aware of what you are doing and where you are doing. That is the platform that you are using. So you have to be aware of all of that. So I absolutely loved your presentation, Nevis and Cheryl. I have learned so much from you. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. And I am sure everybody would have really enjoyed. I hope that everybody has. And yes, if you have any feedbacks on the session, please comment to the event on Facebook. You have the link to that. Please go to the page Vibhudhana and you can share your feedback on the event. And there is a group on Facebook, Teachers Using Technology, which is basically for teachers, and we try to put up events and sessions just for normal, sharing of experiences that can lead to some kind of knowledge development for the teachers. So you can join in. It's a free group. And okay, I will share the link here for the Facebook group. And thank you once again for joining in. And
there's a question. I'll just answer it quickly while you get the link, Harshita. So MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Courses, and PLN stands for either Professional Learning Network or Personal Learning Network. So I'll just write that in the chat to answer that also in a written format.
thank you, Nevis, for actually volunteering. Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Nevis, for volunteering for all of this. And I have added the social media network addresses for Nevis and Cheryl's accounts. So if you want to reach out to them, you can always because I know they are so friendly and helpful. And of course, I want to thank Dr. Nelly, because it was on Moodle for Teachers that we all came together and we contacted each other and we became good friends from there.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, we have Dr. Nelly to thank for a lot. I just want to just say it again, just quickly. I don't think we mentioned it, but Cheryl and I work together and we help individuals or groups of teachers, or individuals that want to conglomerate as a group, in helping them set up their online teaching, how to create materials. We create courses that are specific for their requirements. So we don't have stable courses that we just use for everyone. We create a course specifically for you. So if anyone listening wants our consults on anything, we're here to provide that as well.
Great.
Thank you again, Harshita, and thank you, Dr. Nelly, for creating such a wonderful PLN, because we're so many, and when we meet like this, it's really great, and it's really great to have these opportunities to get together and be able to share what we've learned in all these years together, which is great.
And if
Cheryl,
you
go.
Yeah, if you don't have something like this, join in these MOOCs. We'll have a little workshop that's coming up in August. It's called MMVC, and we'll be talking about our different subjects. But then in the fall and in the spring, there are all kinds of things, groups to join, so you can find out more about teaching and learning online. You can actually experience some of this LMS training and do whatever you'd like for that too.
Yes. So as I have already shared the link, so you can join the Facebook group, Teachers Using Technology, and I keep sharing the links for most of the MOOCs and workshops that Dr. Nelly also helps up with, and all other online courses that are going on for teacher development. We all try to help each other together. So do join in the group, and thank you very much for listening and staying together throughout the session. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Very much.
Have a good
you.
day, good weekend.
Bye bye, everyone. Were there any last questions? No. So great.
Oh, 3 new messages. Hang on. Yeah, they're just saying bye-bye. Okay. Thank you, Harshita.
Thank you again, Harshita. You were wonderful too.
Thank you.